All right, hey, flooring pros, it's Jerry Levinson here, and this is the Flooring Business Podcast. This week I'm on with Chris Price from Floorzap. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Good morning, Jerry. Good. How are you?
I'm good. What time zone are you in?
I am in Central Time Zone.
You are okay, so we're
Do
in
you
the
even know
same
what
time
time
zone.
zone you're in right now?
I'm in Central too. I
All
think
right.
so. I don't know if I'm in Disneyland, Wonderland, or what is that? What Dorothy was from, the Wizard of Oz. If I'm in the land of Oz. Seems like it, with as much pot as there is around here. I think we're all in the land of Oz. Everybody's smoking it, whether they're smoking it or not smoking it. So, wanted to ask you, of course, about Floorzap. Got the background there. You started working for them recently, but I wanted to ask you questions more about your experience. First, how long were you in business before you decided to get Floorzap?
So I've been in the flooring business 23 years. I was about 4 years into owning my own store when I
About four
switched
years into it.
from a prior system to Floorzap.
What were you using before that?
I
Anything
had
or
used QuickBooks Online. I had used Rollmaster and Q Floors.
oh, you have used Rollmaster and Q Floors. So I was going to
Yep.
ask you, what made you decide to go with Floorzap? Those companies have been around a lot longer. And I can tell you one of the reasons I didn't get any of those because of the expense. I couldn't justify that kind of expense unless it was marketing, unless it was giving me a
Right.
return on investment. But just to help run the company, especially when you're at a smaller size. If you're under $5 million, man, you're watching it, especially you're getting started. And a lot of us were under a million, 2 million getting
Right.
started, and it took years to get over a couple $1 million, right?
Right.
So spending 10 grand on software, that's a huge chunk of change.
The expense and the resources needed. I felt like I almost needed a full-time database manager to manage either of those systems for me.
Yeah, and Floorzap was fairly new to the scene, especially when you got on with it.
Yeah, it's one of their first users.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't
Yeah,
know
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So, well, then, what was the difference between using that and using a Rollmaster or Cube Floors when you were first getting started?
I was onboarded in less than 2 weeks. I was writing quotes, sending invoices,
No
collecting
kidding.
payments. I mean, all within 2 weeks. With the other ones, I was months in, and I still could not even write a quote.
Really?
Right.
No. So, yeah, I was going to ask you about that learning curve. What's that learning curve? Well, what is it now compared to when I got Floors app? I just started doing using it right away. I didn't need like training
Right.
because it was pretty intuitive. Like
It's a
I
very
didn't know how to
intuitive
write a
system.
quote, but I mean, I could enter customers' information.
Right. Right. It's very intuitive. I mean, you log in, you can start entering customer information. Once you've got products in the system, you can start writing quotes. It's very user friendly.
It doesn't impress me how good and user-friendly Floors app does as much as it does. It baffle me why the other programs are so complicated
Right.
after all these years, and they still to this day are, you hear it all the time. How many people signing up with Floors app? Do you guys know the percentage of people that are new versus ones that came from different software?
About 60% of them are coming from other software.
Yeah, so
60% of our new users are coming from other flooring specific software.
and these companies have been around forever. They're good people. I'm
Right.
not slamming
Oh,
them. I'm
great people. Yeah.
trying to slam them, but
Yeah.
I am baffled of why they haven't come around and made their processes so much easier for people to use.
Right. I
Uh,
mean, they've built a rocket ship to go to the moon when all we need is a Chevy to get across town, right? Flooring doesn't have to be that difficult.
yeah, that's a good quote. Flooring doesn't have to be that complicated. Well, everything I'm doing within the scope of consulting is dumbing it down
Right.
and taking away the complexities of that. Um, it's huge when we get into Floors app because one of the most important things is getting people to charge the right margins.
Right.
When did you learn the difference between a margin and a markup?
Oh boy, early on in my career, I would say.
Okay, you knew that early
Yeah.
on. A lot of,
Right.
are you surprised how many people don't know that? They don't know the difference
Right.
between a margin and a markup.
Right.
And they'll tell you they're getting 40, 45%, and you find out it's a markup,
The markup.
which
Yeah.
is roughly a 30% margin.
Right.
If
Right. They're missing money.
yeah, so a
Right.
lot of money. It's a huge
Yeah.
difference. Now, and that's something to tell somebody that, here's how it works, and this is what you should be charging, and they're scared to death of raising their prices.
Right.
And you're going to do a dramatic increase of prices on them,
Right.
because you change them from markups to margins.
I think any
Uh,
of us that survived COVID, ran our stores through COVID, and were still in business afterwards should not be scared of raising prices, right? I mean, how many times do we have to raise prices in that 3-year period?
yeah.
I mean,
I mean the suppliers did it 7, 8, 9 times in one
oh,
year.
at least, yeah.
Yeah, and we had problems with the supply chain. There was so much stuff being ordered. So as we're raising prices, it's funny to think about it too. As we're raising prices and things are exploding, inflation wasn't increasing. Well, I mean,
Right.
raising prices is inflation, but across the board with food and gas and all those things, those weren't going up along with um, everything else, right?
Right. Right.
Now we stopped raising prices, and now it seems like inflation is going through the moon.
Yep.
Yeah. And there's less business, and inflation is going crazy. Usually inflation happens because there's such a huge demand for that product or service.
Right.
So people can charge more. But and we did have a huge demand for it, but it wasn't limited necessarily. I mean, we were having problems with supply chains and whatnot. Um, you know, with the expense involved, I now my advice to people was never to get software. I mean, it's great. It's great for running your business, but usually I'm working with people that are starting out there in the first years, and running like this big machine isn't as necessary. Their problem is they need customers.
Right.
And the software programs are way too expensive. So it didn't make sense to invest in it.
Right.
Well, with Floorzap, it doesn't make sense not to get it.
I think you recoup that money right away, day
Well,
one.
I mean, you're making more money. It's not even
Right.
recouping the money.
Right.
You make money with it. And that's the common thing that I keep hearing from my clients that are using Floorzap. That's when, I want to take credit for them raising their margins, but so many of them have said it was because of Floorzap. It made it really easy to say, here's what the price is.
Right.
Here's
With Floorzap, they can
all the
see their margins
numbers.
easily. With QuickBooks, you can't see your margins very easily. You're hoping your pricing is correct, but you really don't know until the job's done.
Well, and it's not even important to see your margins, but to set it up for your salespeople
Right.
so that they're charging the right margins. So that's another thing. Let's go over that. Building a quote, and as well as quoting in the home. How often, how quick were you using it, or did you ever use it to quote in the home?
Oh, we always use it to quote in the home. My
Okay.
sales team was hired from the roofing, siding, windows world. They had zero flooring experience, didn't even know what a square foot was. I
Okay.
taught them a little bit about floors. I gave them a laser and a tablet and taught him the basics of Floorzap, and he was closing deals within about 3 weeks.
Well, that's funny. How, and I get a lot of arguments, a lot of kickback about that. How much experience do you need to be a successful flooring salesperson?
He did 1.3 million his first year with no flooring experience,
Yeah, that's
all
amazing.
in home. Yeah.
So, um, now to me, there's a difference with tile and hardwood. Were you selling those items as well, or is it mostly carpet, luxury vinyl, laminate?
Uh, right. Carpet, luxury vinyl, laminate, hardwood. We didn't do very much tile. And
Yeah.
tile, there is a bigger learning curve for tile, definitely.
Well, I always felt that with hardwood too. Of course, the engineered hardwoods pre-done, that's probably easier to sell
Right.
than some of these guys selling sand and finish. And
The stand and finish is pretty simple, really. There's good
is
money
it?
there, and it's an easy process. Yeah.
Yeah. So you created the process, or was that how big was the learning curve on learning how to sell that?
Uh, It's as simple as measuring square footage and then using one of the templates in Floorzap, a quote template.
So you as the owner built the template. Did your employees understand how to build the template, how to get those numbers? Was that necessary for them to know, learn, understand?
Wasn't necessary for them to know. The template was a checklist for that salesperson. So he would measure, he would start the quote with that template and go through the line. Do I need a bundle of new wood? If so, how much? If I don't, I delete it. How many square feet of refinish do I have? How many square feet of patching do I have? How many linear feet of shoe? And 3 minutes later, you've got a quote written for $22,000.
So it gives you all the questions that you need to ask, so you're not worried about them leaving anything out.
Right.
And I hear all the time from people, how do you make sure that salespeople are getting the margins? And they
Yeah.
want to punish the salespeople for not getting the right margins. And I'm always baffled by that because I feel like salespeople shouldn't know or care what the costs are.
Right.
All you're telling them is what to sell it for. That's all they should know or care about.
You're kind
Now,
of an anomaly in the flooring world with that thought process too. I mean, there's not many stores that operate like that.
well, why would it be important for the salespeople to know the costs? If you're working for a Home Depot, you don't know the costs.
Right. No, it's a great point. I think you've got a valid argument, but it's the way the industry has run for decades, and
And there's a difference. There are some people that don't want them to know the cost because they don't want them to know how much money we're making. We're not
right.
talking about that, but we're talking about to be an effective salesperson, you don't really have to know how to build a quote. All you have to know is you have to know a little bit about the product. You have to know how to measure. And even with that, you don't have to know how to measure anymore because there's tools to help you measure that you
Right.
just plug it in. I did a video on how to measure carpet. And I went into my son's store and he had 3 salespeople there that he recently hired, and none of them had a flooring background. So I asked them, how did they learn how to measure for carpet? And none of them really knew how to. They all use measure square. So
Right.
they they didn't know how to measure for carpet. They said, we don't know. So I'm like, oh, great. You're a lot of help. I got to shoot this video and show people how to measure.
Gary, it's been 23 years on the retail flooring side, and I've never measured for carpet. I've never
Really?
learned to measure for carpet. I can use measure square and do it, but if I had to walk in with a tape measure and a notepad, I couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. And
I
how
always had
important
I
is
always had
that
an
to know?
estimator doing it for me.
Yeah. So you have the tools that you can use for your employees, use for yourself,
Right.
learn how to do it.
Yep.
What is important when you're selling, So from your experience, what do you need to know when you're selling to a customer?
A little bit of product knowledge and just a lot of knowing the customer,
Knowing the
uh,
customer. Great.
and then
Yeah.
knowing the market, knowing the competition, know what the store down the street is going to push them towards, and you know, pivot from that. So in my market, we knew that every store in town was pushing vinyl plank. So we switched and started selling a lot more waterproof laminate.
Yeah.
We are making a lot higher margins and selling a ton of it.
Yeah. I think that's a brilliant strategy when you can switch people from the product that they want, the one that they're checking out from other stores, and you're able to say, hey, I would like to sell that to you, but it just doesn't hold up very well.
Right.
We recommend this instead. And now all of a sudden, all the quotes, all the information go out the window from the other companies.
Right. You're building credibility and trust.
Yeah. So that's brilliant strategy. That works great. So one of the things I talked about the questions is that the salespeople oftentimes they forget certain things like the carpet pad. I mean, you talk about something as silly to forget, but how many salespeople would forget carpet pad just on accident, or the installation, or and I've heard it from other people. They came back, it's like, I forgot to charge them for installation. I can't believe it. No wonder we got this job. We're so low because I forgot to charge for this major thing.
Right. And
Because
that's
you're
where
relying
those
on people
quote
to
templates
remember.
kind of prevent that from happening.
Yeah, and things like baseboards.
Right.
How many people forget to charge to do quarter round or remove and reinstall baseboards?
Right.
So how long would it take you to create multiple quotes if somebody wants it done different ways?
Not long at all. You can simply duplicate the first quote you've created, change the product out in a matter of seconds, and have that quote ready.
Do you have any recommendations on how to go about that, as far as you got a customer requesting multiple quotes?
What do you mean?
As far
As
as
far
how
as from
you
a Floorzap standpoint or a salesperson standpoint?
salesperson standpoint?
I'm a fan of giving them as many quotes as they want. I know it gets tedious, but the people that you spend the most time with are the ones you're going to close, because your competitors down the street aren't spending that time with them. They're getting worn out and beat down. So if
So
you
I'll
want
give you a
32
different
quotes, give her
perspective.
32 quotes.
I'm for spending as much time with them, but I think it backfires when you give them too many quotes, because it's just too much confusion. And as
Right.
part of a salesperson, I think it's your job to stand back and say, I'd recommend you did this. I mean, I can quote you all these different ways, but it doesn't make sense, because that's not a good idea doing it that
Right.
way. So let's quote it this way. This is what I recommend. And if that's off, because my experience has been, the more, if you quote them multiple times, they don't end up going with you, because it's just mass confusion. So
Right. Which one did I like?
not making a decision.
Sure. Fair enough.
Let's talk about the installers. What's it like to provide the paperwork for the installer, and are they getting paperwork? What are installers getting from you when you're utilizing Floorzap correctly?
A couple options. Some of your installers don't want to use our digital platform. We have an installer portal. It's right from their phone or their tablet. They can see their work order, completion certificate. They can upload before and after pictures. But let's face it, a lot of these guys are older. They don't like technology. You can still print off or email a work order to them. And the work order is going to have the customer address, customer name, and then the scope of work and what they're getting paid for it.
And then it toggles back and forth between English and Spanish, right?
Right, right. So you can toggle that work order language between the two.
Will I have enough information there? Will it tell me what I'm paying the installer to on that
Yes.
work order?
Yep. So it shows the installer what he's getting paid right there on the work order.
I think that was one of the biggest differences that we made in our relationship with our installer, was going from them having to send us a bill to us telling them what we were going to pay
Right.
for the job. And it was to their benefit. It wasn't even a huge benefit of ours, but it was to their benefit, because um it was frustrating for them to take the time, sit down. They didn't have time for that, to
Right.
sit down, go through their jobs, remember everything they did, write up an estimate, give it to us so we can cut a check for them.
Yep.
So
Their job is to install it.
yeah.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Do you have an opinion of subcontractors versus in-house?
I'm a strong proponent of subcontractors.
Yeah. Why is that?
I just it's in my market specifically, I couldn't afford to employ installers. I
Right.
would have to charge 10 times what anybody else is charging in town, because they're all subcontracted. I didn't have to worry about work comp. I didn't have to worry about their vehicles and vehicle maintenance and uniforms and everything else.
And some people argue about it as if it's inherently better for the installer.
I can see both arguments. I mean, pros and cons to W-2 versus 1099 for installers.
Right. Um, I think it's for certain fields, especially if you're an expert in wood flooring,
Right.
and tile. Those two areas make sense to have employees if you can convince the installer that that's better for him. So,
But also,
that
if you're an established business that has the consistent workflow, if
right,
you're a newer store opening up, you can't afford to have some guy sitting around dusting pallets all day, not
exactly,
installing something.
right, and um, but even having those subcontractors, like I said, with the Floorzap tool, you're able to manage that better. I got into an argument with somebody about this, the subcontractors versus the um, in-house employee, and one of their arguments is you can't tell them what to do if they're a subcontractor. And I'm like, they're still working for me. I mean, why
Right.
is it I can't demand that they wear a clean shirt and show up on time
Absolutely, you
and
can. You just can't
treat
tell
a
them they have to
customer
wear
a
your
certain
uniform.
way?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You can still have a code of conduct. If they want to get work from you, this is how you'll behave.
exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So that argument never made sense to me, that you can't tell them what to do. Of course you can
Right.
tell them what to do, and they can choose not to do it. They can choose not to
Right.
work for you if they don't like
Right.
the rules. And it's the same with our customers. Our customers tell us what they do, what they want done, and maybe how they want it done. And if we don't want to do it that way, we don't have to do the work for them.
Right.
So that argument has always been bizarre to me. Um, so anything else about the installers? I know we created something called Pride and Proof, which was the installers taking photos of the work.
Yeah. So the Floorzap installer portal allows them to see any before images that the salesperson or estimator took. And then the installer can also upload after pictures. So part of our process was the salesperson, when measuring, would take a photo or two from each space being worked on. The installer, when he was completed, was required to post an after picture, same room, same angle. And that wasn't just for quality control, that was selfishly for social media before and after photos as well.
What other reasons, what other benefits go along with that?
I mean, it's quality control. You're making sure that they're doing the work, doing it well, and it helped build that installer pride in their work too, because they knew they're going to be checked. They knew they had to take pictures afterwards. They weren't going to leave that house without vacuuming the carpet like they're supposed to.
I I have a tremendous amount of respect for installers, and I really think it's a shame that many of them don't take pride in the work that they do.
Right,
And they may take pride in some of the details, but they don't understand what it means to a customer,
right,
and how great that customer loves that product, what you did in their home and what that means to them. So I do think the pictures help. Also, one of the huge benefits has been the dent in the refrigerator that was there before they got started.
right.
And all of a sudden they're blaming the installer for drywall damage or a dent in the fridge. And you pull
Yep,
up the before photos and you no,
wasn't there.
the
Yeah,
antique was cracked before we got there.
right.
you know,
Yep,
so it has helped some people in that as well.
right. Yeah, the
But
installer can take those photos of any damage beforehand and during the job.
yeah, it's been huge for marketing purposes too.
Yep.
I know the internet sucks here. We're probably, am I chopping in and out on you?
Yeah, you are.
Has it been the whole way or
Off and on.
off and on? Okay. Yeah, I can't tell on this end as much. So, how about the salespeople paying them and figuring out their commission?
So Floorzap figures that for them as they're building
So,
the quote. Depending on how your commission structure is set up within Floorzap, they can see their commission while they're building the quote. They can see how a discount might affect their commissions, or how switching from this product to that product might affect their commission.
yeah, I wouldn't be crazy about that. Can you make that on or off or?
Yeah, you can turn that off and on if you want, but the benefit to that is your salesperson is going to stop passing out discounts because they don't care about your margins, they care about theirs, right? So they can see their commission, they can see how a discount might affect their profit margin, their commission on this job.
I know that it's rare in again in the flooring industry, but as part of our culture, man, my salespeople love getting good margins. They love
Right,
bragging about it.
right,
They would come in and say, "Oh, we got a 50% margin on this job," or right,
right.
they were just thrilled as anything. And we created a very competitive atmosphere where they like beating each other. There was always that one guy in the office everybody hated and everybody wanted
Yeah,
to beat. And they
yep,
didn't hate him, but they wanted to beat him.
right,
So if that
right.
person's ahead of the game or somebody's beating them and that person catches up, it creates this competition. And our people love getting good margins. It wasn't about getting the sale, it was about getting the sale and getting good margins.
Have you seen
So,
the sales team rankings feature on Floorzap now? I think that's new since you used it.
oh no.
So right on the dashboard, your sales team can see their ranking compared to their colleagues in both volume and margin.
So just the ranking, or does it tell the total sales too?
It shows the total sales too.
Well, one thing I've said was really important. The most important thing to making your team more successful is keeping score.
Right,
And it's like any game that you're playing, if you keep score, the game will be better. If you don't
right.
keep score, nobody really cares how the game's going.
Here, check this out. I'll share my screen. Oh, you've got screen sharing turned off. Never mind.
Oh, here, I'll turn screen sharing on. Now, for those guys that just listening, sorry. We do have this video on YouTube too, so you can see the screen sharing if you like. All right.
So right there on the dashboard, you've got the sales team rankings tab. Now you've got your sales team and it's showing their total volume, their average margin, closing rate even.
That's
And you
nice.
can choose time frames. You can say, this month, last month, whatever it might be.
Oh, that's
Your,
everything.
every
So
morning your sales
margins,
team comes in,
dollars.
they can log in there and see that. They can see how they're ranking compared to their peers, and that really builds some internal competition and pushes them to do better, sell more.
That's awesome. Do you ever have a problem? And some people have said they don't like one seeing what other people are doing. They don't want to make the bad person feel worse. What's your opinion about that?
I mean, if there's a bad person that feels bad, they might not belong on the team.
Right. And you might not be in sales, probably not the
Right,
place.
right. Do better,
Um,
sell more.
And then some have argued that, well, I don't want them to see how much money I'm making because then they'll be angry at me and I've heard that from
Right.
both salespeople and an installer perspective that, the installer sees how much money we're making on the job. Some people don't want the installers to collect the balance because they may see how much money we're making on the job.
I think it depends on the culture you've built. If it's a culture of the whole company succeeding, I think that everybody is going to be happy and proud to see what the company's making on those jobs.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, it does come down to culture. And then what's your goals? What's the end goals? Well, I always thought the performance had to do more with what are we doing? Like everybody doesn't just care about themselves. And if you're creating a culture where everybody just cares about themselves, it's probably not sustainable.
Right.
Uh, because they're probably going to find a better job someplace else
Right.
eventually.
Right. They're
They'll
only
just
there for the money.
right. So, but if you create a culture where I remember a couple times just really having a hard time back in the days when I was in the blind business and telling my salesperson, if you want to find a better job someplace else, I don't blame you. I mean, things are just really tough right now. And she's like, no, I like you. I want to stay with this company. I want to be a part of this, let's build it. I can go a while without a paycheck if I need to, or, but I want to stick with you. And it was different. People aren't as eager to bounce around, but if you're truly building something and you put some goals and numbers together, the salespeople will be behind it. And they'll
Right.
work hard to help the company reach those goals.
Absolutely.
Did you have certain monthly goals that you set in your company that
Yeah. So our goals were based around what the company's goal was and then what the salesperson's income goals were. So we tried to keep our guys at $100,000 a month in volume, which would put them at about $100,000 a year in income.
yeah, well, that's 100,000 is a lot. It's actually really good. And there are some people that crush that and some people that never hit it.
Right.
Did you ever have anybody that was under 100?
Oh yeah, quite often. We had that 40 to 60 kind of your average. But the guys that were really motivated, the ones that, were true salespeople, they want that six-figure income. And $100,000 a year in flooring isn't that much. I mean, that's your average job is what, $5,000, $6,000.
Yeah.
So 3, 4 jobs going a week shouldn't be difficult.
So what do you think makes a good salesperson? What is it that gets a salesperson a better closing rate?
Hungry and not afraid to ask for the sale.
Not afraid to ask for the sale.
Right.
Did you ever have anybody that emailed quotes or did they all quote in the home?
We did both. There's some that you just couldn't close in the home, right? And we had those customers that came into the store instead of having us go to them for product selection.
Yeah.
So that kind of changed the whole conversation. There's jobs where we would send out an estimator instead of a salesperson, but I think closing via email is just as effective as closing in the home, honestly.
Really?
I think you send that via email, or with Floorzap, you send it via text message or email, and then you call them right away. You make sure they have that invoice in front of them, that quote in front of them. You walk through it, you ask for the sale. Right there on their phone or on their computer, they can put in their payment information and get the job scheduled.
So one of my clients has gone from like a 30-40% closing rate to he's at like a 75% last
Wow,
month.
nice,
And he's doing better this month.
nice.
And the big difference is closing in the home.
Yep,
And not only closing in the home, but really taking time to sit down, go over everything with the customer, understand it, building the relationship, going from uh, being frustrated and aggravated to relaxing and having fun and getting excited for the customer to in the closing rate has just gone through the roof.
nice.
So
Getting excited with the customer is huge. I think helping them visualize the transformation and getting them excited about it, that's the key.
yeah, I've come up with a 50-40 rule. I think your closing rate, you want it to be about 50%, which I think in our industry
Yeah,
that's good.
right,
50% is good. And then 40% margins. So
right,
40 plus is where you want to be. And if you're there, if you're way under that, then you've got a lot of room for improvement. If you're there, you're always looking for ways to improve. But the reason I wanted to come up with a 50-40 rule was because to show the people that if you do everything exactly right, there's still half of the customers probably aren't going to buy from you.
right,
That either they didn't like the price, they got a better quote, or they liked a product better from somebody else, maybe just like somebody else better.
right.
Because how often do you feel like you earned a job because you were the lowest price?
Oh, you do. There's people out there that look for the lowest.
Yeah, but how often? I mean, what percentage of the time is it?
20% of them.
Yeah, it's a small
Right,
percentage
right,
versus it was something else. They like you, they are confident in you, they're
yep.
ready to go now. But how often is it just because you gave them a quote right now and they're still waiting on a quote from somebody else?
All the time.
Right. And so
Right,
I try to urge people, and it's I'm changing it from closing in the home to give the customer an opportunity to buy now.
right,
It's not about you making the sale. It's about them having the ability to get this thing going. Because the reason they called you out there is they're excited. They want to get going, right? So one thing I don't like about software is in most cases it slows people down. So
Right.
again, what's the learning curve like? And I tell them, even with Floorzap, let's get the sale and then put it in Floorzap. So until you get comfortable using it in the home and practice, don't practice on real customers, you
Right.
know,
Practice on your mom, your neighbor, your sister.
exactly.
Right.
So practice with other people, get comfortable using it, and then use it in your customer's home.
I think you write 5 or 6 practice quotes in Floorzap. You'll be able to close that in the home right from the iPad.
Did I ever show you my 2-week sales training program?
I don't know. I don't think you have.
It's basically that. I developed a program that you could train somebody in 2 weeks to sell on their own
Yep.
without shadowing you. And you don't have to sit down and go through a tutorial about how to use Floorzap or about products. And you don't have to do any shadowing.
Right.
Just go out and practice.
Key.
Practice selling. So what's it like to then get paid? You work up a quote for somebody and then hey, that sounds good, let's go for it. What's it like getting paid from a customer?
So you text that invoice link to them right from their phone, or if you email that to them right from their computer, they can click to pay via credit card or ACH. Money's in your account the next day. They electronically sign any contracts you have, and then you can schedule the job.
Does anybody find that obnoxious to go
What,
through the
signing?
phone? To send an invoice through their phone. Does anybody give you kickback saying, oh, that's
No,
kind of, I mean, I think
none.
it's cool. If I'm a customer, that's really cool. But
Yep,
you
this
can't
saves me from having to go back to the store to sign it, or it's. I've had zero kickback on it.
it
People
shows me
love
that
it.
you got your shit together.
Right.
And then this is a big topic that's come up. What about credit card fees? You've got a
Man, I'm
toddler.
torn on that.
Um, I used to say adamantly, no, don't ever charge credit card fees. Just charge more. I mean,
Right.
you shouldn't be whining and crying about 2 or 3%. Just charge
Right.
more. But it's become an acceptable practice.
It has everywhere, and with Floorzap, you can choose if you want to build that into your cost of doing business, or itemize that credit card fee on the invoice.
And then a
At the store
customer
level,
can
you can
see
choose.
if they use the credit card, there's a
Yep.
fee.
Right.
So it's just built into the program.
It's built into the program, and that takes your credit card fees from 10, 12, $13,000 a month in credit card fees down to $60 a month.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
amazing.
it
So
is.
also, you guys have a relationship with a processor
Yep.
who guarantees the best rate.
Yep.
So no more shopping around. Have you met a more dishonest, slimier business than merchant services?
Convolute. I mean, unless it's vacuum sales, maybe, but yeah,
Yeah,
it's it's obnoxious. It's impossible to clearly know what you're being charged.
yeah, car salespeople don't hold a candle to merchant
No,
service.
no, no.
There are, I got burned really one time by a company who called themselves Integrity Merchant Services, and man, I mean, my own bank, MidFirst Bank was charging a fortune,
Yep.
started you off on a good rate and you don't pay attention
Right.
and then you turn around and you're paying these exorbitant rates.
Right.
Another way I've managed just in my own business was to have daily batches, just go ahead and charge daily. That way, at the end of the month, I didn't have $2, $3, $4,000 bill
Right.
paying merchant fees. That's a
And with
huge.
Floorzap, it batches automatically. You're not. It's done every day.
What about the fees though?
So if you're itemizing that fee to your consumer, you're just paying $60 a month. You can budget for that pretty easily.
Right. What if you're not though? What if you're paying those fees? Do you pay them monthly or do you
That's
do
a
you
great
know?
question. I'm not sure. I'd have to ask our processor.
Yeah, and you might be able to set it up different ways with the processor. I mean,
Right.
that's
I
usually
think
in
it's
the
daily. I'm
process.
pretty sure it's daily. I think they're taking their fee before doing your deposit.
Yeah, and the only challenge with that is within your books, but let's talk about that too. Floorzap talks really well with QuickBooks.
Right. We have a direct and complete integration with QuickBooks Online.
So tell me about the advantages of that versus some of these software programs have book software that's
Right.
integrated with their program.
How much do you
Um,
think your accountant's going to cost to learn RFMS accounting or Rollmaster accounting? Right. I mean, everybody knows the industry standard is QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks. So every accountant knows that standard. That's why we will always integrate with QuickBooks Online. We'll never
have
have
you
our own.
have you ever heard of Zoho?
Yeah.
Yeah, Zoho has become huge, great, and
Yep.
they got a CRM, they got books, they've got all sorts of things. I sent mine to my accountant this year. He said, "I've never heard of Zoho before." He didn't know
Yeah.
how to.
Zoho, Zero. There's plenty of them out there, and most of them now have open APIs. So you'll see Floorzap integrating with more of those in
Yeah.
the future.
Well, the point of that was is I actually switched to QuickBooks Online because my accountant had never heard of Zoho before,
Yeah.
and trying to get him the information was a little more complicated. I don't
Right.
like complicated. I like
Keep it
simple.
simple. Yep.
So, I mean, the QuickBooks software really is very intuitive for bookkeeping. And I do like all the employees don't need to see the books.
No, they don't.
So I do, and it's again, not to hide it from them, but it's the last thing I want is all the employees going through QuickBooks,
Right. They don't need to
and
see that.
looking at details that there's all sorts of information in there that really is none of their concern.
Yep.
So I like having those separate, but having Floorzap talk to them. Floorzap gives you all the information. If the salespeople want to see total sales, I'm fine with that. Company sales, see how they're doing against other salespeople. That's great.
But they
They
don't need
should,
to worry about your overhead expenses and your Amex bill and anything else.
right. Well, and I've had some people tell me that with their salespeople that um, they want to show the salespeople those expenses so they know why we need to make this much money. I'm like, man, that's not, you don't want your salespeople, you don't want to go there with them. You
Unless you're
don't
doing
want
a
to be,
profit
we need
share, there's no
sales.
reason to.
Right. We need to make these sales because we have all these expenses coming up. That's not very motivational. That's a fear tactic and it doesn't work. It doesn't help you. But getting excited that, oh, we're almost at $1 million for the year. We're going to break a record. Then they try to close a couple more sales. Um, and then tell me, I want to talk to you about the new email marketing program. It's not out yet, but if we can tease the audience about this that's coming out. Um,
Right.
and there's a lot of people excited about this that don't.
Zap mail marketing.
What's it called? Zap mail
We're gonna call
marketing.
it Zap Mail. Yeah, it's our new
I like that.
built-in email marketing platform. You'll be able to either choose from our template emails or create your own beautiful HTML emails, and then you can send them out to leads in various stages or past customers. You might say you want to send one out to everybody who's purchased carpet in the last 12 months to advertise a new carpet sale, or maybe you're sending it out to leads who haven't scheduled a measurement yet. Another email just to build credibility with your company, whatever it might be.
What percentage of flooring dealers email their previous customers on an ongoing basis?
Not many.
You think it's even 5%?
I would say less than that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And how good were you at doing that?
Terrible.
And you were probably one of the best marketers that I knew. I love
Why?
the stuff that you did. You were one of the most creative. You had great marketing messages. It was fantastic. And but you were missing the boat on this. I knew how important it was. And I did it, but not to the consistency it should be done.
Right. And that's what
Not
consistency is key. You need to continuously stay front of mind for them to earn their referrals and their future work.
yeah. Well, and we talk about that with videos too. I mean, and I always say shoot the damn video. I'm not wearing my shoot the video shirt. I'm wearing my if at first you don't succeed, try doing what Jerry told you to do the first time.
Right.
Um, but when we talk about that with shooting the video, it's the consistency. Email marketing doesn't work if you do it once, but if you're doing it, once a quarter, yes, it sticks. Now, we take it for granted too that customers that used us are going to come back and use us again.
Yep.
But are they necessarily? I mean, what if somebody has a sale or special, shows a product that they really love? Why would they come back and use us again?
Right. I agree. Yeah.
Now, here's the other thing that's funny about that too, and we talk about this is that if you have a problem with the customer, if something doesn't go well and you go back and fix it, that customer will probably use you for life.
And
If,
refer every one of their friends and family to you.
right. But if
Right.
you never have a problem, then you're not top of mind. If
Right.
everything goes smooth, then the feeling might be, well, it pretty much is going to go smooth for everybody. This isn't a big deal. It's
So you're
just
saying we
installed.
should create problems?
What's that?
You're saying we should create
Possibly.
problems?
Well, it just shows you how important it is to stay in front of the people that don't
Right.
ever have a problem. Because
Right.
if you don't do that, then again, the assumption is anybody can do this.
Right.
So they don't necessarily. I was surprised at how many jobs that we couldn't close that we did work for them in the past. And they
Right.
didn't automatically just go with us again. Our closing rate was really high with repeat customers, but it wasn't 100%,
Right.
you know. And if you are doing it at 100%, that's because you're not tracking. So that's
Yep.
another feature. Are you tracking your closing rate and your marketing? So what kind of information are they going to get a touch of a button between uh I tell people you got to do a weekly sales meeting. It's really important for your
Absolutely.
culture to go over those numbers.
Yep.
How hard is it to get those numbers to show your closing rate, your total sales for the month, total sales for the year?
Right there in that sales team rankings tab I showed you, the system figures all that for you. As long as the salesperson is voiding any duplicated quotes. So if you wanted 16 quotes for living room carpet and chose one of them, you need to void 15 of those because they're all really equal to one, right?
If you void the quote, does it disappear or is it
Nope,
still?
it's always there because it never fails. As soon as she signs to move forward, a couple of days later, she's going to ask if you have ordered that carpet yet or not because she wants to change back to quote number 3.
Yeah. Oh boy.
So they're still there. You can unvoid them if you need to.
Okay. But you can void them to increase the closing rate. And I
To show
always want to look at
accurately,
the
not
closing.
increase, but show it accurately.
Right. I always want to show the closing rate as estimates based off of estimates that were given. Like if
Right,
somebody comes in the showroom and they just immediately turn around and walk out, or we're not going to give them an estimate. I didn't get their name, their email address. I didn't get any information. I don't
right.
count that.
No. How many homes have you gone to versus how many you've got an invoice for?
Right. Yeah. How many people did you give an estimate to?
Yep.
How often did you close in the shop? You were saying that when customers come in, sometimes if they come in with their information, you go ahead and close them in the store.
Absolutely. They have a rough number of their square footage. We close them in the store and then just adjust it after measuring.
What if they came in with their measurements? Would you go ahead and close them, or
Sure.
would you go still go out there?
We still want to go out and measure it. I'm not going to trust anybody's measurements, especially on a carpet job or missing transition pieces or floor prep. You don't know what you're getting into.
I close jobs all the time and in
Yeah.
this with their measure. Now, if they come in and say I need 800 square feet, no, that I can't trust. But if
Right.
they come in and with their measurements, usually these guys mapping out and they're engineers and it's like, okay, I can go off of that.
Right.
So, and I've shown um to get an extra yard or two of carpet may cost $40.
Right.
that's worth my time to not go out there and do a check measure. I'll just order a little bit extra and as
Sure.
my insurance policy on this $3,000 job.
How do you make sure they don't have, built-in gas appliance right in the middle of the room? How do you figure all that?
I don't worry about it.
Incidental thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't worry about it. I don't. I want to move fast and deal with the
What does your
problem.
installers think of that? Does your installers have any pushback on that? Not knowing what they're getting into?
No, not necessarily. I mean, all of our estimates included moving furniture, so it
Right.
was built into our prices. So, one of the things they would complain about that, Shane had to deal with that when he took over the business, is they complained about moving furniture. He just upped the price that he paid them for moving furniture, and those complaints went away.
Nice.
Just go ahead and pay them more. You know, and somebody asked a question in our forum, what about tax strip? Do you pay extra if they have to install tax strip? You know what, dude, do the job right.
Right.
Don't, let's not nickel and dime, but we should be paying them enough so they don't worry about it and they're doing the job right.
Right.
But if we're line item and making sure that they're only getting paid for what they're doing, and sometimes they're going to get extra, sometimes they're going to get the right amount. But if they're not getting paid as much, maybe they can talk to us about it. But our priorities, let's get the job done
Right.
and do it right. There's not an option to not do it right.
Right.
So, and you want that relationship with your installer, you want to build it the right way. So, all right, anything that I didn't cover of the
And you covered a
benefits?
lot of it. So we also have our web services. We built some really great websites, bring in a lot of great leads, closable leads.
So, I'll say this about your websites, and I recommend them all the time, is
And thank you for that.
what's that?
So thank you for that.
Um, it really comes down to communication, and a lot of web companies, you tell them changes that you want to make, and it takes them months. If not, they don't do it at all.
Right.
And that's been a huge problem lately. And you guys are just on top of it. Elizabeth's fantastic.
She is. She's great.
Her communication is phenomenal.
Yep.
She's great with customers. She makes the changes that they want, takes care of them quickly.
Right.
So understands what people are looking for. So that part's been huge. The SEO is really good. The cost is really low. You got a great marketing platform.
Right. Yeah. You
So
covered it all. Yeah.
and you work with others. I have other companies that I recommend on SEO pay-per-click, especially if you want to grow and move faster, but you don't give those companies a hard time. Like, you'll work with anybody.
Absolutely. We're all here to help each other grow.
Yeah, our desire is helping that flooring dealer become successful. And that's
Right.
why I recommend Floorzap. It's you are a paid sponsor, but I've had companies that wanted to be a sponsor of the flooring dealer group that I couldn't recommend.
Right.
So I wouldn't recommend them. So you guys are a recommended sponsor because regardless if you're a paid sponsor or not, I'd recommend you because you do a great job for the customers. A lot of
I'm
the
going to
other
tell
software
accounting to stop
programs.
sending those checks then.
What's that?
I'm going to tell accounting to stop sending those checks then.
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck with it. We tried that once. That didn't work out so well. All right. We're going to wrap up the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me,
And
Jerry. Always
all
fun.
right. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, Chris.